When Aisha Schwarzenegger was 16, both my parents died tragically in a bus accident on a sightseeing trip to New York City. It was their anniversary. A sleep-deprived truck driver caused the accident, claiming the lives of 12 others along with my parents. It was devastating. I plunged into a deep depression, but my older brother Keegan was my rock. He was 21, married, and had a young son, Jonah, named after our dad. After the funeral, Keegan moved his family out of their apartment and into our large family home. I welcomed their presence. It helped us both cope with our immense loss. We were a close family, and I happily babysat little Jonah whenever they needed a night out. Dad was an Eagle Scout, and he lived by their motto, "Be prepared." We later learned they'd purchased a week-long, $1 million travel insurance policy for each of them, just $40 from their agent. This policy only covered accidental death during that specific week. They will put the house into a trust, allowing both Keegan and me to live there until my 21st birthday. After that, we could work with a lawyer to transfer the trust to us. Keegan received his $1 million payout immediately. Mine was held in the trust until I turned 21. My parents' savings, retirement accounts, and modest life insurance policies, with double indemnity clauses, by the way, helped us cover our expenses and paid for my high school and college education. Keegan had worked for an auto parts distributor after high school. College wasn't his thing, but he insisted I go. He found a struggling auto parts store owned by a retiring man with no children. After some research, Keegan negotiated a deal and bought the whole business. He kept the name Bennington Auto Parts for local recognition. The business thrived. Keegan's wife, Piper, resented the family money being used for me. She constantly argued that my $1 million sat untouched, earning interest in a trust, while family funds paid for my college education. Keegan pointed out they lived rent-free in a beautiful house, more than making up for his brother's expenses. And half the inheritance was Shaw's anyway. Keegan was baffled. They'd never argued about money before the inheritance. I offered to move out and live in dorms and apartments, becoming completely self-sufficient until I turned 21. Keegan refused. To my sadness, they divorced after only 3 months. Keegan kept the store, and Piper walked away with $300,000. They negotiated 50/50 custody, avoiding child support issues. It opened my eyes to how greed can change people. I hoped money wouldn't cause problems in my future. After college, Keegan bought a house closer to his auto parts store and moved out. The family home remained in the trust while I continued to live there. Keegan looked after me until I was 21, never once mentioning money or asking for anything. I admired him as much as I'd admired our father. When I offered him $100,000 for his care, he said he'd never speak to me again if I brought it up. My degree was in marketing. While I was job hunting, Keegan contacted me with important news. Over lunch, he took me next door to his business. It was a car dealership he said was for sale. The owner's wife had been caught in an affair for the 3rd time, and he was divorcing, regardless of the cost. No prenuptial agreement, and he didn't want her benefiting from his business. He'd consulted his lawyer, who'd hired an analyst to value the business. He was advised on the rock-bottom price he could sell for without legal repercussions. It had to be a quick, all-cash deal. I asked for the owner's financials, which he eagerly provided. I saw an incredible opportunity. I made a low-ball offer, with the condition I'd always sell him any car at cost. The real draw: a General Motors dealership license. I could sell new and used cars. The 114 cars on the lot were a great starting point to test my marketing skills. With half my inheritance gone, I was betting on my future, but Keegan described it as a win-win. I worked hard to improve the lot and facilities, rehiring the previous staff. I treated everyone like family, and they worked their hearts out for me. Schwarzenegger Motors quickly became Keegan's biggest customer for non-dealer parts, keeping the used cars in top condition at a reasonable price. We didn't advertise our relationship, but always combined efforts for our annual Christmas party. Medarda attended our first Christmas party as her brother's date. He'd just bought an expensive car from me. Medarda and I hit it off instantly. The attraction was mutual. She stayed after her brother left, and naturally, I offered her a ride home. We discovered we'd attended the same college, but never crossed paths. We literally met at that company Christmas party. I was instantly smitten with this gorgeous woman. No, we didn't sleep together that first night. but we shared some seriously hot kisses that fueled the fire for our future. After that first meeting, we were inseparable. But it wasn't until New Year's Eve that we finally made love. The passion was intense. We both climaxed the moment I entered her. We married in June, and our first child, Sadie, arrived 11 months later. She kept us busy, but we loved every minute of new parenthood. 18 months later, Chloe joined our family. I'd hoped for a son, but wouldn't trade her for the world. For some reason, Medarda didn't like socializing with Keegan and Jonah. She was evasive when I asked why. I insisted we should socialize with them at least once a month, and since we lived close, she and I could have lunch together most weekdays. Jonah stayed with his mom some weeks, and Keegan, after a tough time, wasn't looking to remarry. He's my best friend. We share a deep trust and affection. 10 years of marriage flew by. In my opinion, it was a glorious 10 years. I worked hard to build my business and provide for my family. The agency gave me a sense of purpose. I even thought about one day handing it down to my daughters if they were interested. As a couple, we became close friends with Karen and Boyd Wright. Medarda and Karen were college roommates, and hardly a day went by without them talking or visiting. Very often, Medarda would go to Karen's house, or they'd come to ours. The two women worked together at the same middle school, teaching different subjects. After our kids were born, they decided to talk on the phone almost daily. I didn't mind. Karen always tried to be nice to me, and Boyd shared my love of sports and the outdoors, so we got along great. Generally, 3 weekends a month we'd go out to eat, see a movie, or both, with them. We took turns paying. Although Boyd was an assistant manager at a local department store and they were on a budget, he stubbornly insisted on splitting all costs, not wanting any awkwardness between us. I appreciated that about him. Our summer vacations were always together, and everyone had a blast. We'd go on trips or even camping. Looking back now, I think one reason Medarda disliked socializing with Keegan was a fear it would cut into our time with the Wrights. Our sex life was exciting for me, but Medarda wasn't as enthusiastic. She rarely, if ever, orgasmed during intercourse. The only time she came during sex was when I reached down and simultaneously touched her clitoris. She was a hottie in my eyes, and I was always so stimulated that I usually finished quickly and became very sleepy afterward. Medarda seemed to accept me as I was and meticulously taught me how to satisfy her orally. I was only too happy to oblige. I patiently took the time to bring her to a single, spectacular oral orgasm that left her breathless and smiling at my efforts. She said no other man had ever made her come like I did, and she seemed perfectly content with me in bed. My wife and I have a great sex life, but there's one thing she won't do: go down on me. I've tried to persuade her, but she's just not interested. And after I've finished, she refuses to even try to get me hard again. It feels a bit unfair, because I always go down on her. It took some getting used to. Let's just say her lady bits have a unique scent and taste, but I've learned to appreciate them. Once I'm inside her, I'm usually done for the night, so I always take care of her first. Most of the time she's quiet, because of the kids, but sometimes I get those amazing little moans, a true sign of a great orgasm. Those are special moments. I'd happily go down on her every day, but she's very controlling about it. She only lets me about twice a week. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I just ask, and she says yes or no. And when she says no, that's it. Nothing changes her mind, even if we're on vacation and we can hear our friends, Boyd and Karen, getting busy next door. I figure her libido isn't as high as mine, but she wants me happy and lets me have sex with her pretty much whenever I want. This is just our normal sex life. At the time of the events that follow, our daughters Sadie and Chloe were 9 and 7, and are the joys of my life. Both are my daughters. There's just no way to describe the feeling of having them wrap their arms around my neck and give me a wet kiss on the cheek. It always makes my day. Karen and Boyd don't have kids, and I don't know if it's by choice, finances, or maybe fertility issues. When I asked Medarda, she said she wasn't sure and didn't want to embarrass them by asking, so I dropped it. They seem to love kids though, and are amazing godparents to our girls. During summer vacation, when school's out, Karen and Medarda are always together, which I don't mind at all. Sometimes Medarda will take the kids to Karen's place for the day, but often Karen spends her free time at our house, which makes things easier for everyone. One summer night, after I just brought her to a screaming orgasm, Medarda started a conversation before I even had a chance to roll over. "Shaw," she said, "what do you think of Karen?" "What do you mean, Medarda?" "I think she's fine," I replied, confused and a little flustered by the timing. Fine? That's it? Don't you think she's incredibly attractive? She asked. I mean, hot and sexy. Oh, sure, she's attractive. Boyd thinks she's the most beautiful woman in the world. Silly, I answered, carefully avoiding any traps. I know better than to comment on another woman's sex appeal when I'm about to have sex with my wife. I'm not talking about Boyd. Of course he'd say that. He's her husband. But I'm talking about you. So be honest. Do you find Karen attractive? Does she excite you? What are you getting at, Medarda? Is this some kind of trap? You're the only one for me and you know that. I know you love me, honey, and I'm not worried about that at all. It's just, Karen and I talk a lot, as you know, and, she told me she finds you incredibly hot. I mean, really hot. She even told me that sometimes when she and Boyd are having sex, she thinks of you when she comes. Medarda revealed. That's ridiculous. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're pulling my leg. Boyd told me they have sex like rabbits, and I can't imagine her needing to fantasize about me to climax when they're doing it. Now tell me, what's going on? What's this all about? My erection was calling my attention. Oh, nothing really. And I don't want you to get me wrong, but I find it kind of exciting to think that my husband is so hot that another woman thinks about him during sex. I feel proud that my man is so desirable. Of course, I always knew that, but it's nice to have confirmation from someone like Karen, who also happens to be my best friend, Medarda said with a sweet smile. This is crazy. I never suspected. I mean, she flirts with me occasionally like you do with Boyd, but I just figured it was because the four of us are so close. But I can't imagine Karen being into me with a guy like Boyd taking such good care of her, in the bedroom. I found myself flattered, but still wondering what she was hinting at. Yeah, she told me he's great in bed. But sometimes when you're stuck with the same old thing over and over, it's not hard to imagine that thinking about expanding your menu to include a different flavor might spice things up a bit. At least that's what Karen told me. Hey Shaw, I have an idea, just to try. I want you to try something, really try this for me just for fun, okay? What's the kids up? I asked cautiously. Honey, tonight when we make love, I have an idea. I want you to really imagine you're making love to Karen instead of me. I'll even pull a pillowcase over my head to help you visualize her better. I want you to let go and really give it to Karen, not me, okay? For me, make love to me, to Karen, as hard as you can. Just do this as an experiment for us. Will you? I think you're crazy, but I guess if it's just us and we're just role-playing, I can go with it, I said, relieved. Oh, you naughty thing. Thank you, honey. This is going to be fun. Now, don't hold back anything. And I want you to talk to her. You don't have to say anything, because you know you're not her. And it would only distract you. But I want you to call me Karen's name and talk to her as if you're having incredible sex with her. All right? Medarda purred and kissed me. Anything to keep you happy, honey, I said, shaking my head, slightly bewildered. Medarda pulled a pillow from its case, covered her face with it, and motioned for me. The moment I entered her, she arched her whole body and responded enthusiastically, her hands freely roaming all over me. She pushed me back and stroked every inch she could reach. She brought a whole new meaning to the term active participant. This was completely unusual. My response to this new scenario was immediate. As I penetrated her, I called out, "All right, Karen, let me know, spread those legs for me." Medarda faked erotic moans, trying to alter her voice to sound as much like Karen as possible. She did everything in her power to get me excited about this idea. I fucked hard and fast. Surprisingly, I was even more aroused than usual. For some reason, Medarda's different actions and reactions to this made our already amazing lovemaking even better. It seemed like she was right. A little spice couldn't hurt. Less than 2 minutes later, I blurted out, "All right, Karen, it's coming, baby. I want it, I got it." I groaned as I exploded deep inside my imagined lover. Medarda frantically pulled me into her as I climaxed. I was shocked. I hadn't seen her this enthusiastic in years, and I hadn't come that hard in ages. She might have known but still asked, "Oh, what did you think? How was it? You seemed more into it than usual." I have to admit, Medarda, you were right. It did add some spice. I'm surprised. Since you're into experimenting, why don't we try and see if we can get me ready for another round? I didn't want to say what I was thinking, but Medarda knew. Her mouth twisted in disgust. Oh, hell no. You know better than that. I don't even want to suck your clean dick, let alone shove that thing with your pre-cum in my mouth. Her face softened quickly, and she reached down and started slowly massaging my cock. Her efforts were half-hearted compared to the enthusiasm she'd shown earlier. You really were turned on thinking about Karen, she said. I was, but I want you to know I would never cheat on you with her. Okay? This was just a role-playing game between us, and you asked me to play along, I said. I was worried things would turn out better than Medarda hoped, and I didn't want her to be upset. Of course, silly. Karen told me role-playing is a lot of fun for them, and she and Boyd have been doing it for quite a while. You're the guy she thinks about. She knew I was done for the night, because I'm a one-and-done kind of guy, and her half-hearted hand job wasn't going to change that. I wanted to clean up and go to bed, but her words piqued my interest. They do? And Boyd doesn't mind her calling my name and thinking about me when she orgasms? I asked. Even more than that, honey. Karen confessed that Boyd sometimes imagines that he's coming inside you when they have sex. She said it gets them both as excited as if it were actually happening. This role-playing could bring a whole new dimension to our love life, Medarda said enthusiastically. Well, I certainly can't argue with success, but I'm not sure how I feel about another man, especially a close friend, fantasizing about having sex with you. I know it's just pretend, but still. Now, don't be such a prude, honey. Like you said, there's no harm in using role-playing to spice things up a bit, and millions of couples probably do it every day. Medarda leaned down and kissed me. I noticed she didn't touch my hand that was still sticky with cum on the sheets. Medarda, typically meticulous, quickly slid out of bed to clean up. Instead of just occasionally, Medarda incorporated the role-playing into almost every time we made love for the next few weeks. She transitioned the play from me only imagining Karen, to her also calling out Boyd's name while I serviced her. At first I wasn't very enthusiastic, hearing another man's name called out while I was having sex with her, but she was so much more enthusiastic during the role-playing that I couldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. It became a regular part of our routine. This went on for almost a month. I also noticed that when the four of us were together, Karen started to flirt with me and be much more friendly, while Boyd became much more openly affectionate with Medarda. I had mixed feelings about all of this, wondering if I was being manipulated and led down some path, but I just figured it was all part of the role-playing that both couples were participating in. I also noticed that when the girls were on their daily phone calls, Medarda often whispered when I was nearby, or went silent whenever I unexpectedly entered the room, as if they were saying things I wasn't supposed to overhear. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but my radar was picking up something wasn't quite right. Before, after a night out, Boyd and Karen would come back to our place, where we'd all have drinks and unwind after we sent the babysitter home. Occasionally, we'd be invited to Boyd and Karen's. We started using their single mom neighbor, Lena Connor, as a babysitter. She had an 8-year-old son, Thomas, who went to school with my girls. It was convenient having the kids nearby, and all three got along famously. Boyd insisted on paying their neighbor babysitter, because they had invited us. This allowed the four of us to relax after a night out without kids underfoot, and we enjoyed our kid-free time with them. For about a year, while Lena watched our daughters until I picked them up, I'd started to appreciate what a genuinely nice woman she was. My girls absolutely adored her, calling her Aunt Lena. The best way I can describe her looks is utterly classy. She was a widowed single mom who'd chosen to dedicate her time to making sure her son had the best life possible. I figured her financial situation was pretty tight. She mentioned she'd used her husband's life insurance to buy a house in a nice, safe neighborhood, but her main reason was the school, which was considered the best in the city. She worked locally as a dental hygienist. She made enough to pay the bills but didn't have much left over for luxuries or entertainment. To help out, her mother picked Jonah up from the school bus every school day and stayed with him until she got off work. The little extra money she got from occasional babysitting allowed her to take Jonah to a movie or occasionally get fast food as a special treat. There was an undefinable quality about her that caught my attention. She was as down-to-earth and easy to talk to as you could imagine any close friend, yet she was the picture of professionalism. I figured that came from her polished communication skills used in her job. I admit I lingered a little longer almost every time I picked up the girls. I didn't understand why I found myself drawn to her. I was completely happy with Medarda and my life. I wasn't going to risk that for anything, so I never flirted with her. One Sunday night, during one of these occasions, everything changed. I was enjoying a beer while the three of them sipped their favorite wine, and we were all feeling pretty relaxed. I was only slightly surprised when Karen, ever the bold one, popped a DVD into the player. They had two couches in their den on opposite walls facing their home theater TV set up on a side wall. Karen sat next to me on one couch, while Medarda and Boyd sat opposite us on the other. The movie turned out to be a soft-core wife-swapping porn flick I didn't recognize the name of, but the intent was crystal clear. Both Karen and Medarda snuggled closer to the guy next to them, but without any overt touching. I didn't know how to react to this new situation, and every time I looked at Medarda, she was either watching the movie or looking at Boyd, never making eye contact with me. It seemed like she was deliberately avoiding my gaze. It wasn't a long movie, less than an hour, but as it ended, Karen immediately started what felt like a staged conversation. "Shaw, I don't know if Medarda has mentioned this to you, but I find you incredibly attractive." She placed her hand on my leg and started slowly stroking my thigh. I wasn't sure how to respond to her comment, and when I looked over, Medarda was still avoiding my eyes. Boyd then chimed in, "Hey man, it's all good. Karen and Medarda talk, and we know, I'm sure Karen's told Medarda, that we're into role-playing for a boost. I can tell you it's worked wonders for us, Shaw, and I hear you guys are into it too." Karen jumped back into the conversation as if prompted, so we were thinking, Boyd and I, that maybe you two would be open to taking things to the next level with us. "I'm not shy about saying, Shaw, that the thought of being with you excites me greatly, and I hope you don't find me repulsive," she said, looking at me expectantly. "No, of course not, Karen. You're a beautiful woman. After Medarda is my number one. Of course, you are a close second." I smiled nervously throughout the exchange. The fact that this lovely woman next to me found me attractive boosted my ego, but at the same time I felt that a dark plot was afoot. Karen slid her hand lower, caressing the inside of my right thigh. The effect was immediate, and my involuntary response was clear, but I still kept my hands to myself. "Honey," Medarda interjected, now looking at me, "Karen and I have talked about this, actually quite a bit lately, and she and Boyd have discussed it a lot too. And what Karen wants to say is, she wants to share herself with you and hopes that you'll make her fantasy a reality." Then Boyd jumped right in. "That's right, Shaw. You know me. I don't have an ounce of jealousy in me. I know you only love Medarda, and Karen and I are very much in love, so we see no harm in adding a little spice to all our lives. I'm perfectly okay with you being intimate with Karen, openly, right here in front of me. No sneaking around, hiding, or cheating in any way. Just four friends coming together in a special way to elevate their friendship beyond the already amazing friendship we have." Medarda locked eyes with me and added, "We know this is all very new and might be a little awkward at first, so, to be fair, Boyd and I will get more acquainted here while you and Karen explore new avenues for yourselves. You know how much I love Karen, and I'd do anything for her, just like she would for me. She asked me to share you with her to make her fantasies a reality. I love her enough to suppress any underlying jealousy about that, because I know she would never do anything to hurt you or me." "Oh God, no," Karen exclaimed as her fingers lightly caressed my now rock-hard penis. "The last thing I want to do is hurt either of you or damage your amazing marriage. You know I love you both so much. From that love blossomed this intimacy, and I'm hoping you'll say yes. I'll be heartbroken if you say no." Karen leaned closer and started kissing my neck softly and seductively. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up almost as much as my penis as she whispered in my ear, "What do you think, Shaw? Will you let me live out my fantasy with you? Can I have my way with you?" Medarda jumped in, "Come on, do it, Shaw. Boyd and I will be doing the same here so you don't feel awkward. Show Karen the kind of man I know you are. Ring her bell like you do me." Karen quickly pulled my face down and kissed me deeply on the mouth while Boyd and Medarda watched from across the room. Before I could react, she'd thrust her tongue into my mouth. I hate to admit it, but I responded and kissed her back. Glancing across the room, Medarda was feeling up Boyd just like Karen was feeling me up. Within minutes, all four of us were consumed by lust as both couples kissed like teenagers, licking and feeling each other up. Karen pulled off her jacket and pushed my hand into her braless breasts. She wasn't as generously endowed as Medarda, but I've heard the old saying, anything more than a mouthful is wasted, and Karen certainly had more than a mouthful. Still kissing me, Karen unzipped my pants, freeing it from its confinement. She paused the kiss for a second, and reached into the drawer of the end table next to the couch. She dipped her hand into a small box and turned back to me. I was so focused on what I perceived as her burning passion that I didn't realize she didn't need to open a lube container. She started stroking smoothly, making my breath catch in my throat. I fondled her breasts with both hands while she stroked me furiously. I was so aroused I couldn't contain myself. Within less than a minute and a half, I erupted like a geyser. I was embarrassed about coming so quickly, but Karen just said, "Don't worry about it," as if she'd anticipated it. "This is new for both of us. Believe me, I'm as excited as you are." She stopped kissing to let me catch my breath and reached into the drawer for a face cloth. I finally regained my senses after my orgasm and looked at the action across the room. Medarda was naked except for thigh-high stockings, and Boyd was naked except for socks. He was grinding his crotch against her face, and my wife was enthusiastically kissing another man right in front of me, preparing him for sex. She was fervently servicing Boyd orally. Jealousy consumed me, and I was ready to jump up and stop when I felt Karen's tongue by my ear. Then she whispered, "They're just doing what we're doing. Let them be. After all, you came inside me making me the happiest girl in the world. Just knowing that I could do that for you is really exciting for me. Now it's only fair that you reciprocate, right? Medarda's told me about your amazing mouth skills. Why don't you show me what you can do and give me one of your special treatments just like you do her? Come on, big boy, take me to heaven." As she said this, Karen dropped her skirt and panties to the floor and lay back on the couch with her legs spread wide. Pulling me forward and between her legs, she urged me to taste her. My immediate task had overridden the urge to stop what was happening across the room, and I knelt between her legs to start kissing and licking along her thighs and upward. Shortly after, I heard the distinct sounds of intercourse. Boyd had Medarda in the doggy-style position and was penetrating her right before my eyes. I never imagined I'd witness such a scene. I struggled to understand why I was letting myself fall into this mess. Yes, Karen was beautiful, but she wasn't as attractive as Medarda was to me. I felt guilty knowing that Karen belonged to someone else. Even realizing that I'd been blatantly led down this path by the three of them, I felt powerless to stop it, because I'd let it happen. Although I didn't like it one bit, my silly inner voice told me to take my medicine. Sensing my internal struggle, Karen took her hand and pulled my head back towards her enticing groin, pulling my face back into action. I tried my best. Medarda usually climaxed within 8 to 10 minutes when I stimulated her orally, but Karen seemed able to hold out indefinitely. Her actions showed she was truly enjoying my best efforts. She gyrated, bucked, and writhed wildly. She responded sexually and seemed certainly pleased, but didn't orgasm. I figured maybe she wanted to prolong the experience and was holding back for some reason. It was silly since I'd heard her orgasm many times in the past from a room away. Maybe she wasn't sure this would repeat and wanted to maximize this time. Or maybe it was something else. Something I didn't want to think about at that moment. After 10 minutes of listening to Boyd and my wife having wild sex, I heard a throaty moan turn into a scream coming from Medarda in a way I'd never heard before. Clearly, she was having the most intense orgasm of her life, and it was from Boyd fucking her. Nothing but straight missionary intercourse. Boyd was holding her by her hips, so I knew he wasn't directly stimulating her clitoris. I felt a pang of pain and guilt for never being able to do that for her. In an effort to assuage my pain, I resolved to make Karen's orgasm as amazing as, if not better than Medarda's. I plunged into her vulva with unparalleled enthusiasm, diving into her unashamedly. I was a man on a mission. I just hoped it wasn't Mission Impossible. Karen responded better than Medarda ever had to me and seemed unrestrained in any way but somehow avoided orgasm. After 5 minutes of Boyd's steady, powerful thrusting, Medarda moaned again, this time even louder than the first. It was a sound I'd never heard her produce. I was baffled. Immediately after her clearly second climax, I could hear Boyd's tired groan as he came for the first time inside my wife. He wasn't wearing a condom, and although Medarda was on the pill, I didn't like that unprotected sex seemed to be a given between them. As I glanced their way for a moment, I saw Boyd pull out and shove himself in her face. She didn't hesitate to enjoy it to the fullest. She licked and sucked their combined fluids, something she'd never done with me. She always said it was dirty. She continued, again stretching out to serve its purpose. Once again, Karen seemed displeased that my attention was wavering and actually grabbed my head and yanked me back into action. She grew louder as if to add to my enthusiasm to continue non-stop before my wife's amazing orgasm with Boyd. It seemed that her husband fucking my wife so thoroughly wasn't a concern for Karen. I was astonished by her lack of concern for them. She didn't even seem curious. But her not coming told me that she wasn't as aroused as her actions suggested. It confirmed my conspiracy theory that this wasn't the first time they'd done this, and that the sexual activity between them had been going on for some time. I concluded that this session was how the three of them figured out how to bring me into the game. Why now? I couldn't say. As I was meticulously writing the letters of the Chinese alphabet on Karen's crotch with my enthusiastic tongue, I could clearly hear the slap of intercourse again echoing from across the room. A very quick glance revealed a horrifying sight with my wife lying on her back on the couch and Boyd fucking her missionary style. I had never seen her spread her legs so wide during sex. I saw Karen occasionally glancing at them and then back at me, with a knowing smile she couldn't hide. At that moment I knew for sure I was being played. But strangely I remained determined to bring Karen to orgasm. Although she acted as if she was fully cooperating with me, I believed it was only an act, and in reality, she was secretly resisting my efforts to make her climax. A few minutes later, my wife let out another scream, even louder as she joyfully announced another orgasm, her third. In all our years of marriage, she'd never had 3 orgasms because of me, never. She was always satisfied with achieving a single orgasm, and then letting me fuck her to achieve my ejaculation. But here, she'd had more with him, and worse, by only intercourse. Boyd's stamina astonished me, but Medarda seemed not at all surprised. As I glanced sideways again to see them mid-orgasm, Boyd had his arms wrapped around my wife's knees and pushed them forward, opening her completely for his forceful thrusts. There was no way he wasn't hitting her cervix every time. He couldn't get any deeper inside her, and Medarda was drowning in her lust for him. My stomach was churning. Karen, true to form, pulled my face back to the cradle between her spread legs and writhed even more. Now I knew she was faking it. My performance was at its worst now because I was no longer interested. But she still acted like she was receiving the best oral sex of her life. After another 5 minutes or so, I heard Medarda scream and shriek another piercing sound as she climaxed a 4th time. Immediately after she lost control, Boyd again violently exploded into her groin as Medarda bucked him back, squeezing every drop into her body. Just as Boyd began to quiet his rhythmic moans, Karen felt the moment was ripe and faked a magnificent orgasm, clamping my head between her legs. I knew it was fake because my mouth was firmly planted on her, and I never felt a pulse or any physical signs of an orgasm. The act completed the deception when she released my head from her leg vise and let me pull away. She looked at me and smiled, saying, "Oh Shaw, that was the best orgasm of my life. I only regret that we didn't start doing this sooner so I could have had the pleasure of your amazing skills much earlier." I weakly smiled back at her and replied, "Glad you enjoyed it." I tried. Tried? I think you did more than try, lover boy, you succeeded. Where have you been all my life? She exclaimed. I sold cars for a living. I knew a cheesy line when I heard one. I quickly stood up and started to tidy my clothes. If you'll excuse me, I need to wash my face. I'll be right back. I quickly went to the bathroom before I could feign any more false emotions. The moment I reached the toilet, I threw up everything in my stomach. I tried to keep as quiet as possible, but vomiting is an unmistakable sound. I realized why Medarda had been so enthusiastic about role-playing. It was all a setup. Luckily, I'd locked the door just before Medarda knocked and asked, "Honey, is everything all right?" "It's fine, honey, just washing my face. Give me a second, and you can come in, okay?" I said, grimacing at myself in the mirror. My lies were painful. I tucked my shirt in and washed my face. The hit Journey song, Lovin' Tushin, Squeezin' instantly popped into my head as the harshness of reality hit me. You make me cry and want to die. Just when I thought that we would try. Lovin', touchin', squeezin'. When I'm all alone. You're out with someone else. Lovin', touchin', squeezin'. You're tearing me apart each day. You're tearing me apart. Oh, what can I say? You're tearing me apart. Okay, honey. Mom just wanted to make sure everything was all right, she replied. I'll be right out. I heard her release the doorknob and walk away. I opened the door and heard whispering in the other room, as if they were having a secret meeting, but I couldn't make out anything being said. Their tone seemed anxious and cautious. My sudden departure had panicked them as I returned to their den with them. I faked a half smile to hide my emotions and suggested to the three conspirators, "That was quite a busy evening. I think we all agree. But I don't want to spoil everyone's warm welcome. Medorda, why don't we pick up the kids and head home? I'm not comfortable with how things played out tonight, and there's a lot to think about, so I want to head home now." Medorda looked at the other two anxiously and said, "Okay, honey. Things moved a little too fast tonight. I understand." Afraid of saying the wrong thing, the room fell silent as we left without the usual hugs and handshakes. Luckily, the girls were tense and full of pride in having had a great time with Thomas and his mother. They kept both of us busy with their chatter during the short drive home, and it took a while to settle down and get to sleep that night, and Medorda and I didn't have a chance to talk. I was grateful for that. I couldn't even look her in the eye. She sensed my discomfort. Understanding me so, she didn't make an issue of my silence. I locked the bathroom door and jumped into the shower to wash the grime from my face and the stench of self-loathing I was feeling for letting myself be used as a pawn in their sick game. I heard a click. The bathroom door could easily be unlocked by slipping a small stiff wire from the outside, and it was clear Medorda felt the need to be in this bathroom right now. Shortly after, the bathroom door opened and she walked in. "Can I join? I need a shower too." "Not a chance. But I'm finished and just rinsing off." "Let's get out of here," I said, quickly stepping out of the shower and starting to dry myself quickly. I didn't want to be near her right now, especially naked. The body that always excited me anytime now disgusted me. I left her there, got dressed, and plopped down in front of the TV in our den. I didn't want to confront her that night. I was still off balance and wanted to be alone to process everything I'd witnessed. I heard Medorda's cell phone ringing in her purse on the kitchen counter, so I got up and checked. It was Karen, of course. The thought of those conspirators talking about my miserable evening tonight infuriated me. I switched her phone off so it wouldn't ring and returned to my armchair in the den. Medorda quickly joined me on the couch opposite. "Honey, are you avoiding me? Is everything okay? Do you want to talk about tonight?" she asked, anxiously. "No, everything is not okay." I gritted my teeth, being briefer than I intended. "I have a lot on my mind, and I don't want to talk right now. I just need some quiet. Maybe we can talk tomorrow." "Okay, honey. I understand. Can I get you anything?" "A snack. A drink." She attempted to get my attention again. "No, thank you, Honorable." I stopped myself from saying honey. "I just want to lie down and relax for a bit, if that's okay." "Of course. If you need anything at all, anything, just let me know," she offered again in a sweet tone. "Thanks, okay." I was too upset to speak. I needed time to think. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard her cleaning in there for a few minutes. And just then, she was whispering in a low voice on the phone. I knew it was Karen. Although I couldn't hear what she was saying, I was certain I was the main topic of conversation. Sitting there, I realized I had to do something to catch those three red-handed and confirm what I knew to be true. I wasn't going to continue playing their damn game and be a pawn in some sick play. I decided to be proactive instead of reactive and started planning my next moves. We rested in silence. Medorda wanted to say something, but I abruptly said goodnight. I woke up before my alarm, despite having barely slept. It was Monday morning, a work day for both of us. My wife slept like a log. It seemed her 4 amazing orgasms had taken a lot out of her. I quietly got out of bed, grabbed some clean clothes in the dark, and got dressed in the hallway bathroom. I left a note on the kitchen counter saying I needed to get to an early meeting I'd forgotten to tell her about. I still didn't want to face her. I wasn't ready to talk, especially with the kids around. As I left the house, I called the office to let them know I'd be out for the day. The previous night, I'd decided I needed to gather more information. Breakfast at IHOP somewhat eased my tension and gave me much-needed energy. I lingered there for about an hour, sipping coffee and replaying the previous night's events in my head. No, I wasn't confused. I wasn't mistaken. I wasn't unsure about anything. Boyd and Medorda had been having sex for quite some time. Of that, I was 100% certain. How long had all three of them been lying and deceiving me? Medorda's betrayal stabbed at my heart. But why risk revealing this now? Maybe they feared me finding out, and they may have thought the best way to smooth things over was to pretend to bring me into their little swinging club. Hell, for all I knew, they might have been having a real menage choice. Medorda never even hinted at girl-on-girl sex, but Karen was definitely involved in this, and had clearly given her consent. There was not a single doubt in my mind. It irritated me to think they believed I was so trusting, so gullible, and so clueless that I wouldn't realize last night wasn't their first time. It insulted my intelligence. As I sat there finishing my coffee, I got a short text from Medarda simply saying, "I love you." I didn't reply. My mind was racing. I needed a plan and fast. The betrayal stung, but I wasn't going to let them win. This wasn't over. Part 2, My Revenge. You won't want to miss it.